Hello, everyone. We are back once again with another edition of Mellow Musings. This is the 30th edition. We started last year in January and we meet at least twice a month. So this is the 30th edition today. But our society, as you are probably aware, has been around since 1997. And in all these years, almost 30 years, next year it'll be 30 years, we have been organizing conferences, we've been publishing, we've been getting people together, organizing talks, and doing a lot of work. And some of you who are logged in today, you have attended some of our meetings. Still have a lot to do, and we'll keep going with your support. So today in our Mellow Musings, we have another very interesting talk, and that relates to the role of the media. But before we come to that, let me introduce you to our speaker. We have here Eric Chinje. Hi, Eric. How are you today?
Hi,
It's
Professor
good to see
Manju. Good to
you.
see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Eric has been to India a few times and he's attended some of our conferences also. So it's good to have him back on this platform. So this is Eric, and he is an international journalist, media executive, and public intellectual with extensive experience in global news leadership and democratic governance. He has also been a senior executive with the CNN International. He's played a key role in shaping Africa-focused global news coverage and media strategy. He was a Fulbright Fellow once upon a time, I think about 40 years ago, 30 years ago. That was at Harvard University. And he has worked at the intersection of journalism, public communication, and institutional trust across Africa, Europe, and the United States. He is currently involved in monitoring and advising on electoral processes in Cameroon. Eric is known for his integrity and ethical leadership, and debates, he brings to media debates a rare combination of professional authority, global perspective, and humanistic insight. Welcome, Eric. It's great to see you here. And I must tell everyone that you are not just a journalist, not just an educationist. Yes, you're an educationist also, being on the board of directors of so many institutions internationally. And Eric is also deeply involved in the electoral processes of his country, that is Cameroon. He is now settled in the US, so it's rather complex. He belongs to Cameroon, he's settled in the US, but right now he's been in Wales for quite some time. So, hopping from one place to another, but then that is what makes him the Eric Chinje that he is. Welcome, Eric, and let me introduce you to Vipin Pubby. Vipin, we are so happy that you could join us today because I've been trying to corner you, I've been trying to buttonhole you for this session for a long time, and finally it has happened. And I must tell everyone that Vipin has obliged us by canceling a trip to Delhi, rather postponing it, so that he can
Yeah.
be with us. Now, Vipin Pubby is a big name in Indian journalism and a bigger name in Chandigarh, where everyone knows him and everyone loves him for what he is. He's a great guy. That's how he's described most of the time. You'll find him in a lot of intellectual circles and in a lot of, we have a lot of literary bodies in Chandigarh, thinking groups, and Vipin is a part of most of them because, well, he being what he is, everyone loves to have him around. Vipin has also been very actively involved in teaching journalism, and he has set up the School of Journalism, a School of Journalism in a university in Himachal, which is doing extremely well now. So, Vipin, great to see you here. And now
Thank
he is, after long innings as a journalist, as a teacher, as a professor, now he's planning to begin something else. And I can't wait to hear what it is because I'd love to join. I'd love to join him.
Yes.
Love to work along with him because, well, some people you like to be around them so that the journey becomes more interesting, so that you can do a lot of things together which you enjoy, like-minded people. So thank you, Vipin, for being with us today, and thank you, Eric, for joining us. Right.
Absolutely player. Absolutely player. Thank you so much for those nice words, Manju. And yes, this is the third phase, as you mentioned, that I'm beginning, and it is basically exploring the world further.
Oh, great.
Basically cutting myself loose from all everything and going all over the place for visiting and meeting people going across the
Wonderful.
world.
Wonderful. He's a great traveler too. A traveler. He's traveled a lot for professional reasons, but otherwise also he loves to drive. He loves to go places, and generally,
Yeah.
enjoy this gift that we have, this gift called life. So thanks, Vipin, for being with us. Okay, coming back to Eric.
Thanks.
Eric, I love the topic that you're going to speak on today. It sounds really interesting. And well, I was just wondering what exactly you would mean, but I guess we'll come to know very soon once you start talking. Before we begin a conversation on the subject, would you like to say something to the people who are logged in? They are mostly, teachers or scholars, and this talk is being recorded, so it's going to be circulated wider. Would you like to say something before we begin?
Yeah, absolutely, Manju, and thank you for bringing me into this. I always look for opportunities, to engage with people and especially for some reason, with India, because of the diversity and the richness of the culture and the people. And I believe that if we can get our messages across in India, then we can get it across the world, because you kind of find the world in that cultural mix, and so I love it. I've always exploited every opportunity I have to come to both visit India, but also to engage with the country at different levels. Um, I believe that, and I'm really happy, Vipin is with us, because I hope we can keep this conversation going beyond this conference, Vipin, because we've got to step in and figure out the messaging from everything that's happening now. Artificial intelligence is bombarding us and redefining who we are in many ways, redefining this one instrument that we have, that, and you and I have, we have we have the ability, I think, to not only understand the inner strengths of the media, but how we can use it, how we can use it as an instrument to help in shaping the world, which may just go haywire. We're seeing it with what's going on in the Middle East now. We've got to help the universe understand itself. We've got to figure that out. And I hope that, we can continue to have this discussion and then see, there was a time, and we'll talk about this when we get into the deeper discussions about how I personally even got into this. There was a time, it was clear where the media stood in the scheme of things. There was a time we talked about media as the fourth estate, in which you had the three other powers, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. And then we somehow, the media students forced themselves into that space and said, no, we are the fourth estate. We are the fourth power. And we arrogated to ourselves certain powers, the ability to reflect society, to tell people who they were and what they should be. We've lost that, or maybe. Let's discuss that. We need to have that discussion on where we sit today. And that's what I'm hoping we'll do, Manju, going forward today.
The title of this session, Gatekeepers or algorithmic ghosts, gatekeepers or algorithmic ghosts. What
And the role
exactly do you
of
think?
media in a changing world.
Yes, yes. What
Mhm.
exactly does this convey?
Well, it's that transitioning that we, that's what this is about. We um, today, well, when I joined the media some 4 decades ago, clearly I was, for me it was we were told, and I was told, and I understood my role to be one of the gatekeepers. In other words, we were the gatekeepers between um, leaders and followers. We're the gatekeepers between citizens and those who are in power. And what we did was get from one, we provided feedback to the leadership, and we got from the leadership um, the direction in which it wanted to move society. And essentially, we played that role. So we're the middle men and women between the powers that were. Um, and which is why communications thinkers back then defined that role as what I said earlier, the fourth estate, because there were three other estates. We were in the middle, and then we reflected society to the folks. I but now it's that role is no longer, we're no longer those gatekeepers. We're no longer standing there and looking, telling each side of the divide, of the power divide, who they are, what they should be thinking about. We're no longer in that place. It's so it's been diffused right now, and we need to reconfigure who we are and where we stand in the scheme of things. What the media's role should be. That's really the big question, and it's so real because if you think about what is going on right now, we've got to help folks understand what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz. Folks don't understand that. Or they hear it, everybody's throwing out what they can about, what they believe it's all about. Mr. Trump, even the president of the United States, I can guarantee you, he has no clear sense of what it is all about. So he gets up one morning and all of a sudden, you know, tanks cannot flow through, cannot go through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's affecting folks in the remote villages of India, of South Africa, of my country, Cameroon. It is affecting them. Why? Because that's the kind of world we live in. And then, of course, everybody on social media is giving the interpretation they can of what that new reality is. And that's what I'm saying we're no longer then gatekeepers. We are now part of this algorithmic redefinition of the world. And that's what we're saying we need to understand and, analyze and understand. And we'll talk some more about it as we go forward.
We're talking about social media. There's so much going on in social media, and most of our news comes from social media. Sometimes it's garbled, sometimes it's fake news. Keeping all this in mind, what do you think the role, the responsibility of journalism is now? We were talking
You know,
about what it should be. What is it
mhm,
now? What should it be?
mhm. you know, we it we need to come back to a fuller understanding of what media. Of course, journalists are they kind of define what media does in many ways, but it's no longer within their control as it used to be. So in a deeper understanding of media, maybe would also help in defining what the role of the journalist is. But let's first of all dig deeper. What really is media? Media is essentially the bridge, a go-between, a mediator. It's a media. So if we don't if we don't understand what we're bringing together by bridging values and systems and organizations, if we don't understand that, then we're missing the point essentially. So I'm saying, let's dig deeper. Let's understand what it is to be at that bridge. Redefining media. That's really what it is. What are the human values that should be transmitted across systems? And it's in understanding that I believe we can redefine the role that we should be playing. And to understand it, we need to look at the two sides that we're bringing together. We're looking at a world that is increasingly being defined by algorithms. How is that happening? If you look at Wall Street, if you look at the international markets, whether in Delhi or Washington or New York or Paris or London or Johannesburg, look at what's going on the international markets. The biggest, the largest companies in the world today, let me put it this way, the top 5 companies in the world today are all informational. It's Google, it's Meta, it is Amazon. It's all these companies, Microsoft, that exist within the information space. The top 5 companies, billion-dollar companies. So that's clearly, and why are they the top 5 or the top 10? It's because that's what we are consuming the most. That's what human beings are consuming the most today. And what they're consuming the most is information, which is being taken and translated in terms of simple numbers. Who is consuming what and where and when? That is being translated through the use of algorithms. That's why I say algorithms are redefining the world. We need to understand that. And if we're going to bring that world together, we need to figure out who's consuming on the one side and who's producing on the other.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to understand that.
At this point, Vipin, would you like to make any observation or comment at this time? Because
please.
I
please
thought
feel
maybe
free.
if we can
I'm
finish
sorry
and then
I talk
maybe
too
we can
much
have a little
sometimes,
conversation.
Vipin. Please understand,
But in between, if you have something to say, just please, just give me an indication. Yeah.
All right. Right. Please.
Yes.
Please carry.
Mm-hmm. So, Eric, you were telling us that we are consuming all this that is produced, the algorithms and so on. And journalism is a sort of a bridge between algorithms and what? And the consumer.
It's the producer of whatever, of the information that, and the consumer of that information on the other. So we're supposed to be in there in the middle, playing that role of the bridge between the two, the producer and the consumer. It still comes down to these traditional concepts, consumer, producer, and whoever's in between.
What happens to the traditional form of journalism, media? Where does that go? Is that redundant now?
Is that question to me? Well, it is, again, it's the problem now is that's why I said we need to dig deeper into what it is, what media is. Because the problem now is who is producing and who is consuming. If information has become the leitmotif, it's become the defining element in all of this, in our social interactions, if that's what it is, then who we must ask is producing. Who's the producer and who's the consumer? Down to these, fundamental notions. Who's the producer? And the producer is no longer the journalist who's trained to understand what it is between, the journalist is trained to understand where the information lies and how do you process information. No, folks on social media just throw out what they hear, and sometimes they don't verify, they don't even understand where it's coming from, and that enters into this this media sphere, and people consume it, and that redefines how the world is seeing itself. So we're no longer the gatekeeping folks who define what the world is. We're no longer a mirror of any of society. It's coming from everywhere, and but that does not mean the journalists. Let me say this: the role of the journalist is no longer relevant. No, that's So, so we're fighting for space. We're fighting to reposition who we are. And that's what we're trying to. That's all I'm saying. We must figure it out. We must understand it. We must, where is truth? Where are the human values that we must promote in this complex atmosphere of existence?
But don't you think talking about human values today seems to be rather out of place? Because we are living in a very commercial world, very materialistic, in the midst of a consumer culture that you've just mentioned. Now,
You know,
in this scenario, where do human values fit in? And what do we do to reclaim them? Can we reclaim them?
I would love to hear what Vipin has to say about this. We no longer know why the war in Iran started.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because of the Epstein files that, the man who has power in the world, the most powerful man in the world, wants to distract from the Epstein files? Or is it because Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, may end up in jail if he doesn't distract his country? Is that what is happening here? Or is it, and because of that, we're having these oil price rises, we're having the cost of living explode everywhere across the universe. How do we process all of that in ways that the farmer in the village could understand it? And who's processing it? Because people on their phones are picking up information they're being bombarded from everywhere. How do we, again, then help them make sense of all of that? That's the challenge of the times. That is really where we are challenged. And it's important that old folks like Vipin and myself can step back and say, hey guys, let's rethink all of this. It's important for the world. Otherwise, we'll live in the perpetual confusion, as is the case today. So I don't know if I'm
in
getting.
fact, that is what is happening. And as Eric has been saying, it's with his vast experience in journalism and media and the current scenario, it is certainly, the kind of role, that classical role that media had of, checking the facts first, bringing out the facts and bringing out a balance in their reporting, that is no longer there. So now it is basically, as he said, algorithms. They decide what you want to watch. So if you are fond of a particular politician, say ex-politician, you will get all the tweets, you will get all the social media stuff regarding that X, and not with Y. So this has now actually unbalanced the entire scenario. Like you had newspapers in the past, which gave different kinds of viewpoints, which whether you were in favor of a government or not in favor of a government policy or something. So they had all these various aspects that were there, and left it all to the readers to decide. You give both this point of view and then let them decide what is good for them, what is bad for them, or you can give all the arguments and different points of view. Now that is losing, and that is a very serious thing. So in case you are liking one particular politician, you let only social media regarding his positive points and not the negative points, and therefore you become a little more radical, so to say, that your thoughts, you think that there is nothing opposed to this thought process. So that is becoming a very serious problem. And the basic role of a media person in the past, or even now, the classic media is, as he said, as gatekeepers. Gatekeepers in the sense that we will not put out any news unless it is verified, cross-checked, and made sure that it is not because of some vested interests. So all those things was the classic job of media, to see that rumors, allegations, wild allegations about corruption or anything else do not go to the public, and these are first checked, and then only it's put out before the public. But with the social media coming in, it is very, very difficult, because right now it is a kind of a fight or a war that who brings out the news first. And then it is not just the trained media professionals who are giving out news. There are people who are making reels and just giving out whatever information they get, unverified, unchecked information. And many people tend to, tend to agree with whatever they're saying, and they believe them. There are a few, of course, fact-checking agencies available, but not everyone is aware of those. It's only we in the media and perhaps very educated people who know that there are agencies who fact-check, and you can always get these things verified. But most people will not, and they believe in the rumors, and that is causing all these serious problems. And another thing that is happening, Eric, is that I would still say Trump holding press conferences and speaking, but there are several large several leaders across the world who don't speak to the media. So they only tweet, or they just give public speeches or whatever they want to say, and they don't want to.
I think Vipin has frozen. Something wrong with the connectivity, perhaps.
What is
Eric,
his mind?
oh,
Yeah.
the connectivity dropped for a while. Or
Okay.
maybe it was my
Okay.
side. Maybe it was my side. Huh.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique kind of position. Maybe Eric, with his all his experience across African continent and Europe and US, maybe he'll be in a better position to guide us to what is happening, and how, what efforts are we make to tackle this menace, I would say.
See, on social media, we have all these people who want to think of themselves as journalists and people who promote news. But what about the professional journalism? What about professional journalism? And where does ethics come in? At least in today's world. Because everyone says that this is the truth. This is the truth, so social media and so on. But what is the truth?
Mm-hmm.
How do we discover that? Even in TV channels, it's not just newspapers, but TV also, you have one channel competing with the other. And as common men, as the common population, we are at a loss. We really don't know what is true and what isn't. So what do you suggest should be done now?
Is that to me or to Vipin?
Oh, to you first, then Vipin.
Oh, okay. Well, with I'm trying to put the emphasis on shared values. We have to have shared truth. If we cannot agree on the fundamentals of what is true and what isn't, again, it's unfortunate that we live at a time when the most powerful man in the world continues to play around with the truth. It is most unfortunate. But that being said, he will have his time and he will move on. The rest of us will continue to occupy this universe. We will continue to have the obligation to find our common humanity, and within the range of that common humanity, figure out the things that, and some of these values of dignity, of respect for other opinion, for contradiction, even for acceptance of contradiction. And that is where I believe journalism finds its space, finds its place. That's where I believe the journalist, because at the end of the day, folks come home to television, and they pick up what they
What
they
they
pick up,
see.
and yes, and then they vehiculate, they spread that out. Social media continues to have, in each case, a limited. We still have the difference between mass media and social media. Social media continues to be fairly limited in scope. People still, pick up newspapers. The people who lead the world cannot go without figuring out what is being said in the newspapers, on television, and massively on radio. So there's still that ability to help in coordinating the broad spectrum of views that are spread even on social media. And so what we need to do is figure out, try to develop a common understanding of what constitutes these human values that we're talking about. We've, and it's becoming even more urgent because the world is becoming so much more integrated. It's becoming so much more of, a global village in ways that we've never known. Artificial intelligence is reinforcing, it's reducing the world into, as we say, a global village. And in that village, the 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 reaction to things is instant. It no longer takes a week for me to know what's going on in India. It takes seconds in some cases. And what's going on there is having an impact in places unimagined. In Myanmar, in Ouagadougou, you name it. So so it's not only has time been compressed, but the globe is shrinking more and more. And there's there's a need to develop. We're no longer the small newspaper in Chandigarh. No. Whatever, we have to figure out how we incorporate the forces that are coming at us from all over the globe and compress that to an audience, to help that audience understand what's going on around them. And it's in doing that we will find new value, in my view, new value for standard, traditional, you name it, mass media. I don't know what Vipin thinks about that.
Yeah, no, in fact, as you rightly said, where media currently is passing through a very bad phase, I would say, for you, because of the social media coming in recently. It hasn't been much duration yet, but I think the basic values of journalism are going to stay, because the only one difference, that major difference that I foresee coming up as regarding media, is that you have to be fast and you have to be accurate. That is the major thing that has to be done. People want news immediately, they do want it, but they also want the correct news. So this phase that we are going in, we have so-called self-made journalists who can for some time maybe mislead people. They can't do it every time. They can't do it for a long duration. People will see through, and they already know there are certain people in India in different political parties. So if you are reading their tweet, you know that you can't really depend on that. So I think maybe this phase will get over as more awareness spreads about social news. And then when people, if they come across something, will go to the websites which are more credible, which are authentic, which are dependable, rather than in that first reaction that they will accept anything. So that is coming up, and it's, I think, gradually it's already there. Now people don't immediately buy whatever somebody is saying, and even if they buy once or twice or thrice, they know that it is not authentic, and that they themselves will be shown in poor light in case they believe this kind of news that is floating around. So I think ultimately it is the speed that will come in and accuracy, and for that you need these very trained journalists who can do it very quickly, who can cross check, who know where to cross check, how to do it, and bring out the truth. So, and that thing is happening, and that is gradually happening. So, and what is another thing that is there is that in the media earlier there were silos. that either you were a reporter or you were just a sub-editor or you were just a photographer. So now those things are all going away, and media persons are now kind of giving holistic news. They write the script, they do the reporting, they prepare videos, and they edit those and then bring the presentation. So one has to be all rounder, and one has to be knowledgeable. You just can't depend on AI for the real life experience. So I think that ultimately the role of media and journalism will remain, and it will get strengthened once people get over this phase of believing whatever kind of news anybody is giving. So I think I'm optimistic about it that things will improve.
I'm glad you're saying that, Manju. I can continue, right? I'm glad you're saying that, and it is my hope too. I was looking at an AI generated report this morning, and I was initially convinced. I didn't realize it was AI, but then the more I listened to it, the more I realized, oh my God, is this really happening? So there is a need. There's a growing, we're seeing the integration of um, all of these factors. We're seeing the integration of all forms of, transformative technologies. Uh, and AI is at the heart of all of it. And but not the 8 billion people on Earth, see it and understand the difference. We At some point we're going to have to figure out how we educate, how we draw the line between AI generated truths and the facts. You mentioned fact checking, which was emerging as an important aspect of the work we do as journalists. Fact checking
Sacred work. That was sacred.
was rising to the heart of it. All of a sudden now we have to figure out what is AI generated and what is the truth. It makes it a whole lot more complicated for the humans that we are and social beings that we must be. So we must learn and accept to interact with each other based on these, again, the common truths that we can accept, the values of shared experiences and shared truths. It's becoming a whole lot more difficult. But we cannot afford to buckle under and kind of say that, well, there's no, where do we go from here? I think we just need to put on our thinking hat and bring, because the unfortunate thing about all of this, and we're talking about the integration of all the platforms, is that there's a tendency to do that. It's being driven for the most part, I think, by the commercial demands. The newspaper takes its material, puts it on the web so that it can get to a certain audience. And, the folks in that audience take it out and share it by phone because I saw it in this news. So it's happening with no sense of direction. And I don't know what you think, Vipin. Shouldn't there be, and I'm glad for conferences like this, because shouldn't there be platforms where the drivers of the process, should we not generate more and more of these kinds of environments where we can come together and think through what is going on in a world that constantly the globe is shrinking, whether we like it or not? What happens in my backyard is almost certainly going to impact on what's happening in your backyard. We can't run away from this. So how do we elevate, the quality and the nature of the conversations that should be taking place across the world now, and especially with a threatened profession as that of the journalist. We must, journalists have to feel threatened and start determining how they work together. And I think one way of doing that is by creating this, the circumstances that allow us to share not only our truths, but also share our experiences, and then begin to figure out, my goodness, what do we do if we're not going to fail our audience, the people who depend on us, but also if we're not going to fail, doing what we need to do to get this world to evolve as it should. I think we're getting to a more common set of values, but we've got to determine what those values are and then communicate them. And I think in doing that, we will still have a place. The role, because we're talking about the role of the media in a changing world. That is what this conference is all about. The role of the media in a changing world. We've got to determine that role, I think, and we can only do so by engaging actively with each other and defining as best we can what these values are, how they can help us understand the new role that should be ours. We're no longer gatekeepers. We no longer are that. We are now the glue. We should see ourselves increasingly as the glue that will bind a disparate world, a world that is, going in all directions. Manju.
Yes, it's very good to be idealistic. I perfectly agree with you, absolutely agree with what you say that something needs to be done. But see, when you look at on the one side, we have these algorithms, we have social media and so on. But on the other side, we have these TV channels, and how many of them are biased? You would know better. What can possibly be done about that? It is not just you or I, but it is the upcoming generations of journalists, reporters who need to have the right kind of values. How do you think that can be done?
Well, Manju, may I take this because you were
Yes,
mentioning
please.
about
Yes.
Please.
TV news, the
Uh-huh.
television news. I must tell you that even earlier, maybe 2 years, 3 years ago also, the proportion of news channel watching,
Mhm.
uh, only 2 or 3% people were watching TV news, while the
Okay.
others were watching sports,
Mhm.
entertainment, and so on. And now this has further declined. This viewership about all TV channels, particularly in India, which are all rubbish, most of them.
Really, maybe I belong to another generation, but tell me then, how do people keep abreast of the news of what's
I'll tell
happening?
you, no, you see, because that is a very small percentage of it. But why it
Okay.
comes in all conversations is because it's a visual media.
Uh-huh.
And visual media, you retain that remembrance. So not many people are watching that. Very, very few. If you even go on YouTube and see how many people are watching NDTV, Oriented India Today, you will find the numbers. But
Okay.
chalo, that may not be actual true reflection of what is happening. But even then, it's just because TV is a visual media that it comes out in conversation and people think like it's the entire media. It is not. And right now, it is actually the digital media which has taken over, which is much more important than even than print media. And there's a ray of hope there because all these major media houses, like say Times Group, Hindustan Times, Express, and other Bhaskar and everyone, now they are having their social media
Yeah.
handles. And those are very credible ones because these are the trained journalists. So I'll just give you a very interesting example. When I joined reporting way back in late 70s, like 79 actually. At that time, uh, there was only Doordarshan, that was the government TV, and there were these newspapers like
Mhm.
ours. And even if, say, there was a major event that took place at 2 o'clock in the daytime or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, uh, we would not be bothered because the newspaper will come out only at 10 o'clock at night. So there was no big hurry to, to report that immediately. But now, of course, it is immediately then one has to do it. And therefore, media houses are also now taking journalists who are all-rounders, who can bring and present this thing. And one more point I would like to make, as Eric was mentioning about AI, as how it is bombarding us. Now, the thing is, from media perspective and from for everyone for that matter, make use of it and how we get associated for it. So I think we need to really accept and collaborate with artificial intelligence and see that how we can bring in more credible news, faster, quicker, credible, cross-checked news as early as possible to the readers. I think Manju has logged in, but Eric, we can continue.
Lights have gone off. The lights have gone off here.
Yeah, Eric, you.
Because- Can you hear me? The
Yes.
lights have gone off. Huh?
Yes, Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, no
Well,
problem. Okay.
So
that's
please.
no different from the experience I have when I engage with folks in my country. And believe me, I was engaging in a conference like this yesterday with Canada, and all of a sudden the lights went off, and I was told there was a snowstorm or something. So we live in a world that is, increasingly, whether we like it or not, it's the forces at play are very similar, and we just have to keep trying to figure out how best we can help folks understand. Yes, now you're back in the light.
Right. Yeah.
It's a good thing, Manju. you know,
I was thinking of the
I've
time,
spent some time thinking about.
Eric. I was thinking of the
Yeah.
time when you were reporting for for CNN, for the Desert Storm, and that was towards the end of 1980s, right?
Yes.
Oh, so
Yes.
things have changed a lot
Precisely.
since then. What are your observations?
Things have changed a lot since then. And we're now we're talking about in a world defined increasingly by artificial intelligence, redefining how we see ourselves, what we see of ourselves, and people are putting their imagination to work and giving us their own views of how the world should be. So we're bombarded by truths and half truths and falsehoods, and again, if we do not rise up and help redefine the collective meaning, if we do not, we must, as we go forward, figure that out. Otherwise, we'll end up with some guy detonating a nuclear bomb and wipe the rest of us out before we even know it. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about the profile of the journalists in today's world. And I'd like for Vipin and I to kind of agree on that. I'm thinking of, it's no longer the journalist of the late 70s, as you and I got into this world
Almost.
today,
Frozen? Have I frozen or have you frozen?
contextualize in ways that we never had to do before, who have a sense of responsibility, and our universities need to emphasize these values in ways that, our training institutions, need to emphasize these things in ways that they never did before. How do we rate the news? And it is, I think the more we can do that with clarity, the more we would, even though the people who lead the world, folks like the Trumps of this world, and the rest of them, they think about this. Mr. Trump, this depends on Truth Social. That's where he's governing the world today. I mean, He throws everything out on Truth Social and the world reacts. We need to, but that reaction is coming from journalists who go to, for the most part, a lot of journalists go to Truth Social, pick out what Mr. Trump is saying, and interpret it for the rest of us. And so that role is still there. That role of a bridge is still there. But we've got to help, Trump, social media, they can generate content, but they cannot generate conscience.
Mm.
The journalist should bring that element of conscience into it.
Yes.
And that's why I'm emphasizing, talking a lot more about these values of truth, of trust, values of trust. It's important that it's all of that helps in shaping who the new journalist of the 21st century will be. It's no longer just the intelligence to be analytical and get the news, analyze it for people. No, there's a whole range of factors that must come into play in defining who the journalist of the century is. And I'm sure the more people get to identify and trust with news organizations that promote these things, these values, I think we'll begin to see emerge a more important role for journalism in the world.
What do you have to say, Vipin? And while Vipin is talking to us, maybe the people who are logged in can come onto the screen because this is a subject that everybody would like to. Everybody has a viewpoint.
Yeah.
So if you have anything to say, please come onto
Yeah,
the
I
screen.
think we can ask, if
Otherwise,
they need to ask any
yeah.
questions, we'll be happy to do that.
Right.
But I would
Yeah.
like to make the point again that we need to collaborate with AI. We can't wish it away. AI
No, we
can't.
cannot.
So we
Right.
need to collaborate. We still need to take its best things out of it, and we need to compete. And therefore, to build up that credibility, I think that is the underlying point, that we need people, we need journalists, we need media organizations who are credible. And therefore, people would like to go and check out with them in whatever is happening. So I'm optimistic that with the more such things coming in, there are phases, there are ups and downs, but I think ultimately it is the credibility of media that will survive, and we need to take everyone together with us. So maybe any questions, Manju, you would like others to put in? Or
Yes, I've just asked them to come onto the screen. Please come onto the screen. Manpreet is already here, and the others also. Please come onto the screen, and we'd like to know what your point of view is. Manpreet, hi Manpreet, you can unmute yourself, and you're not in your office. I think you must have just got home, right? Yes, you have unmuted yourself, but I still cannot hear you. I cannot hear you. No. Well, I hope there's no
Well, you
storm.
can't hear Manfred because she's not saying anything yet, I think.
I think she was trying. And Ishtiaq, yes?
Okay.
trying, but we're not able to hear that.
Ishtiaq, you can start your video.
Yeah.
And you have something to say?
Yeah, there's a power failure in here, so I don't have my webcam
Yes.
now. It's dark, so I'll just ask my question here.
Yeah.
Firstly, thank you so much for this lecture, and it's really nice that we have veterans of journalism here, and it's nice to know and listen to both of you, sir. And thank you so much for this. My question was regarding us as consumers of news these days, and as Baudrillard would say, starting from the Gulf War, everything is televised. There is a certain information overload. My question is regarding this desensitization of information. We keep on looking at the same kind of information about deaths, about destruction, continuous, and it does not stop. And we are in a certain phase, and we feel that every day this news comes, and it kind of desensitizes us and normalizes the idea of destruction and war, in today's times. So as consumers of such news on an everyday basis, what would you what would you ask us as consumers, to follow? And because we are obviously affected by this directly or indirectly or directly, So yeah, thank you, sir.
Eric, you are so much experienced in all these war zones and all that. I think you need to answer that.
Yes, I mean, isn't that the question of the century? That is precisely what we are and should be concerned about. I mean, the normalization, I increasingly see people who say, I will not watch television because of the death and the destruction and the blood. And it doesn't seem to concern anybody. Look at what's happened in Gaza. Look at what it's happening in Iran. Look at houses are being blown up in Sudan, you name it. So the questioner is totally right. We are desensitizing people. We are normalizing things that should not be normalized. And it is these values, it is these. So to hear you say it from India, and I'm sitting here in Great Britain, wondering about the same things, and I'm sure across the universe, there's concern for that. So the question is, do we shy away from what that reality is, because it is part of our reality? Do we shy away from it and therefore not talk about it? Or do we increasingly, and this is what I was saying about contextualizing, do we try to contextualize it? Do we redefine? Do we help in redefining how these things should be perceived? Do we connect the dots in a way that people can see that this is not normal? Let me go back to Iran. We know why that war is taking place, but how many people understand what the connections between the problems Mr. Trump is having, the problems Netanyahu is having, and why the cost of fuel has gone up and I can't fuel my car, and the cost of food in different parts of the world have gone up? What's the connection there? And I think and maybe the more we can bring this out, the more the folks who are voting in certain leaders will be more conscious of what their responsibility is, because at the end of the day, it's about the vote. If Mr. Trump is voted out, a new reality sets in because he's such a powerful figure in the world, and Mr. Netanyahu, and so on around all the other leaders around the world. So I think we we should not allow for this normalization of evil. We've got to fight it, and fight it collectively. It cannot be, and I think, media, mass media, especially television, radio, you name it, they still have a role.
Yeah.
And we've got to emphasize that. There's no way around it. As I said, AI, which people are using increasingly, can generate content, but it cannot generate conscience. It's important to understand that. So we, the humans in this chain of actors, we have to bring in conscience. We have to bring in trust. We have to bring in the element of truth, and then generate or try to find this common meaning that we need as we go forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is very well said. That is very well said. And I think it hurts all of us that we are living in a world where reality has become so painful. And at least for our generation, our main concern is what sort of a world are we leaving behind for the younger generation? If killing each other, if dropping bombs, if destroying civilizations is normal, this is what they're going to learn. And this is a very sad situation indeed. I don't know what the solution will be. And I wonder if our social media can do something about it instead of harping on the wrong things, on violence and so on. If we have to turn the focus on something else, something positive, human values, conscience, and all that. I don't know if that would be possible. But I think it's a very sad situation. What do you say, Vipin?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no doubt. As I said, this is one of the worst phases that we are going through. And we all have to put our heads together to see how what needs to be done. For instance, I find very, very few human interest stories coming out of Iran or Israel war. Very, very few. It's only basically so many killed, so much destroyed, so much bombs and everything. And even if, and certain parts of media, they're also very biased. They say, if Iran is saying something, they say Iran claims. And if it is the other side, then they say, oh, this is what has happened. So this bias has been also coming out in the media, and but it's very unfortunate. But what we need is people, our journalists, future who show empathy, which AI cannot show. So it has to be empathy that needs to be shown. And I think maybe we must teach the younger generation or younger journalists coming up the value of empathy and bringing out the human element. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else who wants to say anything from the background? Anybody who wants to come onto the screen, please do so. Now is your chance before we wind up. I wish there were more things to be optimistic about, but like
There's
Eric,
Tulika who wants to come on, I think, Dr. Kakara. Yeah.
yes,
Uh,
Tulika.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir.
Good
Wonderful
evening.
listening to your talk. I was just wondering that we are talking about lot about journalistic ethics and journalistic objectivity. Is it not that the today's contemporary journalism is walking a very fine balance between speed and accuracy, truth and half truth, and while working for the big media houses, between the nexus between bureaucracy, foreign media, and a lot more going on.
There
So,
is
is
this
it?
rat race, huh? You feel that there's this rat race going on, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, again, thanks for bringing this up because it takes us again to the heart of the issues. Speed and accuracy, of course, that's, everybody wants to be the first out. And, and social media is just driving every one of us crazy because before you know it, it's out there. And old news now becomes, something that happened a few minutes ago because the speed. So speed and it's clearly something we have to internalize and try to figure out whether we react to the speed of it or we react to the core values of truth and accuracy. And I believe that again, traditional media has its place in that global sphere. At the end of the day, people will still ultimately turn to radio, to television, to newspapers. But again, if they find at the end of that day that they're better informed, that the quality of the product, the media product, is higher, if we, so again, the strength of resisting the temptation to be the first out the door, it's maybe one of the qualities that we need to inculcate in our media professionals. I believe so. There's again, it comes down, in my view, to what we've been talking about all day today. Comes down to these values of that we must recognize and promote within the media, the press family. We can't be reacting to speed all the time, or we'll get it wrong. And I don't think the world would continue to advance at a rate that is difficult for the human mind to process, because that world is being determined increasingly by the speed of technologies that are becoming available to all of us. And look at how many people in remote areas have phones that they turn to for information. We can't fight that, and I don't think we should. But I think what we can If ultimately people realize that information that they get from these traditional media are what ultimately determines where their lives are going, if they can understand, if they have, they may see the bombings in Iran and you name it, but if we can connect those dots to what really, social media will not connect the dots. No, I think traditional media has that role. And if people get used to that, they'll ultimately have to continue, turn to their own, to these traditional media houses for the kind of information that they need to improve on the quality of their lives. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to understand what's happening around them. And they have to figure out where it is they go to. It's not always going to be on social media. Social media would excite, would try to shape opinions, would be fast, speed, but social media will not tell them what it is they have to do or what they need to understand to figure out why the cost of bread has gone up. That's where the rest of us come in, I think.
Vipin, would you
Vipin,
like to
anything
say?
to add to that?
Yes, yes,
I
Vipin.
think
would you-
Eric has summed it up very well. So he's made up
Mhm.
all the important points, and I think it has been a very insightful discussion, and particularly from his experience and all. So it has been really good, and I think we need to have more such conversations among the media fraternity.
Yes,
Also.
I
Absolutely.
think you need to bring in more, you need to spread the word amongst institutions, educational institutions, youngsters who are studying journalism, who are into media studies. So they're the ones who have to be groomed into this. And well, they have to understand the responsibility that goes hand in hand with the power that social media gives.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
on that note,
Uh, Yeah, before we wind up, Manju, I hope that first of all, I want to thank you for doing this, and I think we need a whole lot more of this.
yes, we do.
I hope the next time around we will not only have, it'd be nice to bring students and professors together. It's very important. But I think, bring the old guys like us, like Vipin and myself, who can inject something into that, into that ongoing conversation. But it needs to be ongoing. That's what's important, and as I mean, let's think about our leaders today. The world is still led by folks who, whether it's there in India or in my own country, there are folks who are not the speed of change is not quite factored into the policies that I'm seeing in countries around the world today. There are some countries that have woken up to that reality, but many haven't. I don't think the leaders of Russia, China to some extent, yes, India, the United States, and the European Union, a lot of the leaders in these institutions or in these countries have not totally woken up to the pace of change that artificial intelligence is imposing on all of us. But the bigger question, as far as we in this group are concerned, is have we woken up to that? Have the media professionals woken up to that? And, I was complaining about this only a couple of days ago to the journalists in my own country, Cameroon. Wake up and, operate the change in your own mindsets before you can pretend to change the mindsets of people around in the country and around the world. So, I don't think we've done enough. We're far from doing enough to wake up, to change, to have a different understanding of the context in which we are all evolving today. The pace of technological transformation is so high, we should not be as crazy as that, but we ought to provide the speed breaks on that journey. And I think we can. So my hope is that as we have these discussions and we go away, each of us in this forum should be thinking about what we can bring. We don't have another world to go live in. This is the only world we have. And I think it's important that we all agree that we need a common understanding on a whole range of issues. And the only way we can develop these common understandings is not by creating these micro publics that social media impose on us. No, it's by having that common understanding that comes from fora like these, where you bring the right people, let me put it that way, to talk to each other, figure things out, and then go in our separate ways and do what needs to be done.
Any final thoughts, Vipin?
I think Eric has said it all, so I think it's fine. And we had a good, nice discussion. And we have actually exceeded our time because you said 8 o'clock, and I think we are already past that at 8:15.
Yes. But we could go on forever, on a subject like this.
Yes.
And well, it's been, Parth has come in now. Parth, do you have anything to say, Parth? Huh?
No, ma'am. No. It was a great session, ma'am. Great session.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. Huh? And the recording will be available. Please share it with your students because you have a good bunch of students under you, and they should all understand that social media is fine, and putting out news is great, but there is something like the commonness of humanity that has to be respected, and we need to work for the cause of humanity more than sensationalism, more than grabbing the headlines, more than being the first with the news. So you have a lot of responsibility on your head, Parth. But thank you for joining in. And with that, Eric, thank you very much. Vipin, thank you very much. It's great to see you, even though virtually we've been out of touch for some time. And it's great to have you back here. And I hope you'll be joining some of our sessions in future also. Right.
Yeah, ma'am.
Absolutely. Always available. Thank you so much. And Vipin, when I come to India, I'll make sure we have that coffee together.
Why don't you stay in touch? You should stay in touch because you do have a lot in common. Huh?
Yes.
So nice talking to you.
And both of you are great travelers. Both of you are great travelers.
Yeah, exactly. We should plan on meeting somewhere.
We must meet up somewhere, yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
And
thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.